So let's talk about CSS. If you are doing a job interview and the employer asks you, what do you think about CSS? Is that an important thing or not? What would you say? But yes, because you know it is, or yes, because you believe it is? Some developers, you won't believe me if I told you that many developers, they go to an interview, they are probably really good with JavaScript, they say CSS, yeah, that's for designers, that's bad. But you should believe how important CSS is. And if you don't believe, at least don't be silly, and in a job interview don't say that you don't care about CSS, right? Alright, so I'd like to talk about Flexbox and grid, which are two relatively new techniques to lay out your user interface. Very, very, very powerful. Historically speaking, CSS was a toy language. Should we refer to CSS as a language or not? Is CSS a programming language?
No, it's not.
But the thing is, in CSS, you got if-else, you got media queries. A media query, we'll see media query today, is an if-else. It's controversial. It's controversial. I attended a conference in Amsterdam. We presented code reading. One of the speakers who was writing a book about CSS, he was very popular on Twitter. So he did a poll asking the community, what do you think? Is CSS a programming language or not? It was like 50-50, right? Thousands of developers, they thought it's a programming language. Thousands of developers, they thought it's not a programming language. I can see that technically speaking, it's not a programming language. And you say, why? Because it's not Turing complete. There is a Turing test. There is a way to evaluate if something can be considered a programming language or not. But there's a technicism. Yeah. In reality, it's a markup language, but it has some elements inherit from programming language like if-else. Yeah? All right, so let's ignore these things for now and let's focus on the workshop. So something you will see over the next weeks is, look, I got my browser, so this is my browser. I got my VS Code, all good, right? So I can go to VS Code, I can type some awesome stuff, and I can go to the browser, check it works, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a big fan of that. So I would like to show you how do I like to work. It may not be that ideal depending on the size of your screen, but still, that's the way I feel I'm more productive. So what do? I like to have both VS Code and the web browser side by side. I don't like to go back and forth. I want to have every single important part of the development journey in the same window. And how do we do that? Well, if you're a Windows user, you can snap windows, right? So you can drag and drop the one thing to the left and then another thing to the right. If you're a Mac user, does not support it out of the box. However, if you're using a relatively new version of Mac, you can hold the maximize button and then look at how sexy this is, right? So you can drop it. So for instance, I'm going to drop VS Code on the left, and essentially now I'm going to drop the web browser on the right. Yeah? To me, this is much better. Now it's going to be a bit difficult because I need to zoom it, yeah, so everyone can see the screen. But in real life, you don't have to zoom it. So you can work relatively comfortable, especially if you have a 15-inch laptop. Yeah? At home, I have a huge screen, in which case it's fantastic. It's very sexy, right? Okay, so again, VS Code on the left. Let's do a quick test. So for instance, if I say welcome to summer, does it work? It works, right? So, I can be relatively comfortable that the setup is correct. And now one more thing. Some of you are working already on task number 4 on Codeflix. Task number 4 talks about what? Responsive, that's the word, right? Starting from task number 4, we start looking after mobile, because that's very important, of course, we all agree on that. Because of that, you will see that I like to focus on mobile first development. Can anyone tell me what mobile first development means? Correct. So do things for mobile, and then once you are happy with that, do the necessary changes to make sure they look right on desktop, right? A good example of mobile-first development is Instagram. If you are Instagrammers or influencers or any of these things, you see that the mobile app is what it is really well thought, whatever, but then you check Instagram on desktop and it feels really weird. It feels like, this is just the mobile app with, you know, feels weird. But it's clearly a good example of mobile first because they really understood that the main customers, the main group of customers is not on the desktop, it's on mobile. So you can take a picture with a mojito on the beach, right? You don't have your laptop, you know, speaking on the beach. All right, so how do we get introduced into the amazing world of mobile first development? With Google Chrome, there is a way to simulate mobile devices. So if we do right click anywhere on the screen, and then we click inspect, you will see something like that. That's DevTools. Actually, I believe Gray explained that yesterday, right? No? Yeah, DevTools, right? So generally speaking, DevTools, they are at the bottom. By default, there will be something like that, right? However, I like to drop it on the right-hand side. It helps me to take the most of the available space on the screen. And then here that simulates what? iPhone 6, 7, and 8 Plus. So you can select between different devices. I'll select, I don't know, iPhone 6, 7, 8. Screen is a bit smaller. So then I can get more space for DevTools. Don't forget, this is a low fidelity emulation. So this is just emulating the size of the screen. So this has nothing to do with the hardware, with the camera, things like that, of course, right? So don't try to build a pixel perfect app for iPhone just using that environment. But at least as a first step, is great because you can imagine that it's much quicker to iterate left to right than coding something, copy it push, go to your phone, oh, I got a WhatsApp message from my uncle, let's go to play tennis, oh, I forgot what I was doing, right? So that journey is way better focused than the physical device one. All right, so because I got my, my screen on the right-hand side, I would like to build a layout. I want to build a layout with 3 items. For instance, let's talk about fruits. Yeah? Orange, apple, all these things. So I want to build a list of fruits. So let's do something. Let's simply, look, I type in a div, and then now I can type apple, and then, you know, with Visual Studio Code, you can copy stuff very quickly. So if you are a Windows user, I think it's Control-Shift down. If you're a Mac user, it's Option-Shift down. Look, pretty convenient, right? Just to replicate a given line. If not, you can just copy it and paste it, you know, all these things. So, yeah, so to copy a line, if I want to copy that line, I don't even need to select it. Just put the cursor on it, and then Control-C for Windows, Command-C for Mac, and then I can paste it. You see? As many times as I want, no problem at all. But there is even a smarter way to do that, which is, you don't even have to highlight it. Just put the cursor on the line, and then press Control-Shift-D on Windows and Option-Shift-D on Mac. And then down, 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 it gets copied automatically. Yeah? Small trick. There are lots of tricks with VS Code. So we got apple, we got orange, and then we also got a banana, right? Okay, cool. I want to display them side by side, yeah? Left, middle, and right. However, that's not the way it works. HTML, by default, is blocked base. That means every time you display a div, it will take all the available space. Yeah, it's a bit aggressive. I want all the space for me. And that works fine in some cases, but I got the space enough. So I want to display apple, orange, and banana one after the other, right? That's why Flex is so convenient. How does it work? We need to do a couple of things. First of all, we need to add a div surrounding our list of elements. So we got 3 elements. Let's add a div surrounding them. You see? Nothing will change visually speaking. Oh, that's wrong. So nothing will change visually speaking. You can see the list of fruits. But why am I doing that? Because now I can deal with CSS. So I can add a class. How do we add a class in React, guys? Class name, correct. Why class name instead of class? That's not the HTML standard, actually. Yes. To avoid technical confusion. So, there is a keyword in React called, not in React, in JavaScript, sorry. There is a keyword in JavaScript called class. Yeah? So classes were added to JavaScript in 2015 because of the pressure of all the Java developers migrating to the front end. But that's a separate story, politics, right? So now JavaScript has classes. Because of that, if you put a class here, does it refer to an HTML class or to a JavaScript class? It's confusing. And actually, if you do that, you cannot see that on the screen, but if I zoom it a bit, can you see the error? Class. Did you mean class name? One of the reasons why React is so popular is because if you fail, the error messages are fantastic. So it's very easy to learn with React, right? Yes, I wanted to say not class, but class name. All right, class name. So we got our main, our parent element surrounding our list of items. We need to add a class name. You will see, depending on the community, they like to call it, generally speaking, either container or also wrapper. It doesn't matter, right? You can call it Trump if you want. The important thing is to have an identifier that surrounds your list of elements. That's the first thing. And also, for each individual element, we also need to add a class name. Let's call it, generally speaking, the community likes to call them item, but you can call them element or box, again, depending on your appetite. I find item quite standard, to be honest. So we'll add class name item across all our 3 items, elements, yeah? Does it make sense? Cool. So I'm not going to change anything on the HTML anymore. So on the remaining 16 minutes, I'm going to work on CSS because the HTML is perfect to build a powerful user interface, regardless of whether I want to use Flexbox or Gridbox. We'll see the differences. All right, time to do a bit of CSS. If I want to style, for instance, I want to add a red border to the container, yeah? And here is where we see who has been doing a bit of training on the Codery platform. So how can I add a red border surrounding my 3 items? Dot container. Why dot? Class. Correct. The dot refers to a class. Yeah? Class container. All right, the container. And then how do we add a red border? Border. Semicolon. Border semicolon. No. Colon. 1 pixel. Solid.
And then
Red. Nice. Well done. That's it. You see? It's a bit small, but I hope you agree there is a red border color. Because I don't want to be zooming all the time. Let's add some. We'll increase the size of the text in a minute. So, that's the container. On the items, I want to have green border surrounding every item. How do we do that? No, I just want to add a green border.
This is for border again.
Yeah?
Column, 1 pixel, or 2,
Yeah?
solid again, green.
Correct. Yeah? And now, I hope it's a bit small for the time being, but I hope you can see a red border at the bottom and a green border surrounding every individual element. How do we increase the font size of the items?
Font size or font weight?
Font size,
No, yeah, that one.
font size, and then give me a number. 10. I don't think this is going to be that big actually. Size matters, guys, in here. 30 pixels. Let's try 30. Nice. Looking a bit better, right? All right, 30 pixels. So I got my 3 elements, but again, I want to display them on the same row. How do we do that? Look at how simple this is. We need to do at least one thing. On the container, on the elements surrounding our basket, our list of fruits, we need to type display flex, correct. And look at what happened. Boom. Immediate. May not be perfect, but I hope you see the difference, right? Now all the elements are on the same row. And I'll show you something. Sometimes you need to deal with a lot of tiny CSS changes, 10 pixels, 11 pixels. Of course, you can do that, right? You can go here instead of 30, 31, 32. However, I strongly recommend for prototyping purposes to apply the changes on the web browser directly. And how do we do that? Look, you will see that I have a button here. If I click on this button, I can select, you see, I can select individual elements. When I select one of these, on the right-hand side, I can navigate, you see? Why do I do that? Because when I navigate, when I select an item, at the bottom, I can, first of all, check the styles, border, these are the styles we've applied, but I can change them. Look, border, instead of 1 pixel, look. So that's really good for quick testing purposes. What happens if now we refresh the page? Will the border be 1 pixel or 20 pixels?
Back to 1.
Back to 1, correct. These changes don't persist. As soon as the browser gets refreshed, game over. But again, it's good for testing, right? It's good for quick testing. So now, look at my screen. I got apple, orange, and banana. But in reality, you know, I want to have some space between them, right? Because they are displayed all together, and then I got an ugly empty space on the right-hand side. So let's learn how to align, how to decide the position of the elements across that row. And I will use DevTools to quickly try different approaches. There is a, you know, if you, in the 90s, when we used Microsoft Word, sometimes we want to align the stuff, text to the left, to the right, to the middle. Do you remember what was the name of the action? That was justifying. You can justify text to the left, to the right, to the center. So a similar principle applies here. There is a property called justify content, correct? And now look, I can, with my keyboard, I can go down, look at how immediately the user interface reacts. You see? Some of them don't have any impact, but for others, look. Unfortunately, my face is on top of that. But anyway, you see? So it's a fantastic way to quickly experiment with different styling. So, if I select, for instance, a space between, this is pretty semantic, right? A space between. That means that please leave all the available space in between of my elements. So that feels a bit better from a readability perspective. If these 3 elements are buttons, for me as a user, with my fat finger, it will be easier to click on them. Yeah, do you agree on that? All right, so that's the main thing, justify content. There are other properties, very interesting, but I'm not going to cover them all now. However, what happens if in reality, what I want is not to align elements to the left, to the middle, to the right. I want to make sure every single element spans as much space available on the screen. How do we do that? Some people struggle to get that, but let's try to do it slowly. If I refresh, again, all the elements are on the left. So I want to reuse that space, you see, that white space, proportionally on each item. So the width of each item will be 1/3. And how do we do that? Look, on the item, that's important, so on the item itself, not on the container, but on the item, we can add a property called flexone. And look at what happened now. Nothing happened for now, but if I refresh, you see the difference? If you didn't see the difference, look. What that means? What that means is we are creating, every item will span one virtual column. How many virtual columns do we have? 1 plus 1 plus 1, 3. Each item will have 1 out of 3, which is 1/3. And now the question is, what happens if I change flex to 2? Will it be any visual difference? Second?
Yes.
What will be the visual difference?
They won't work.
Esteban disagree.
No, because they keep the same proportion.
So when I
Before you had 3 columns, now you have 6. So before you had each item 1 column. Now you have 6 columns in total, and each item is 2 columns.
Yeah, I cannot describe that better, so that's exactly it. So nothing will change. Why? Because how many virtual columns do we have now? Correct. How many virtual columns each item spans? 2. 2 out of 6 is still 1/3. So nothing will change. Look. You see? Nothing will change. What happens if I put 10,000 here? Stay the same. That's a bit weird. If you see that code, like, what the hell are these guys doing, right? But then you may be thinking, but then what's the point? What's the point of dealing with 1, 2, 3? I'll show you an example. What happens if we want to promote the orange in our supermarket? We want to make sure that orange has more space than apple and banana. We can do something quite interesting. Look, we can add another class to orange. Let's call it orange. Yeah. And now let's go back to the CSS. Let's leave it as 1 for now. And we can do .orange flex 2. Can you see the difference? How many virtual columns do we have now? 4, that's correct. How many virtual columns Apple spans? 1. Orange? 2. And banana? Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's the way you can make a given item more prominent.
How if I want 4 columns?
Second?
How if I want 4 columns?
You want a 4th column, so you want to add another fruit.
Yes.
Okay, let's add another fruit. I want to add pineapple. Right, now the problem is, because the screen is so small, it's hard to see. But let's play in desktop mode. How many virtual columns do we have now?
5.
Correct. So out of five,
Or it's 6
yeah, correct. In percent, what's the percent of the apple? It's 20. 1 out of 5. What's the percent of orange? 40, correct. 2 out of 5. What's the percent of banana? 20. 1 out of 5, and same for pineapple. Yeah? So that's the way you can change the size of a given column. It doesn't matter if we have 1 column, 2 columns, or 3,000 columns, right? And of course, instead of flex 2, can we put flex 3? Of course. Yeah? The same principle. So how many virtual columns do we have now?
3 in the middle and 3 of the 6.
6 columns. In percent, the orange, how much does it span? 50%, correct. 3 out of 6, right? So that's the idea. That's the way you deal with sizing.
If the screen is smaller, will it maintain its color?
That's a good question. That's a good question. Look, that user interface looks okay with that resolution. But you're right. If I go mobile, it's like too much space. Yeah, it's vomiting too many pieces of fruit. So let's change the UI for mobile. Let's learn a bit how to do responsive design. What that means. If I'm on desktop, something like that, that's fine. That's fine. I can deal with that. I can select as many pieces as I want. But if I go mobile, I want to go back to the block-based layout. So I want to display one fruit after the other, because I got plenty of space at the bottom, right? How do we do that? We need to create a media query. And this is very important. I said before that a media query was a sort of if-else. So I want to create a media query saying, hey, if the resolution of the screen is below, 600 pixels, then change some styles. How do we write a media query? Okay, let's do that. Add media. Second. Only screen. Parentheses. The size. Max. Width. For instance, 600 pixels. That's the way you create a media query, more or less. I never remember the exact syntax. I always have to Google it. But if I go to Google and I type CSS media queries, look, media only screen and, yeah, the syntax is a bit weird. But anyway, that's why we go to Google, right? Media only screen and max width 600. So that what that's a bit weird. What that means? That's a bit. So that implies that, for instance, if you want to print the page, it won't apply, weird things, legacy stuff, right? Anyways, what it is. All right. So in here, I can apply CSS only for mobile, only for devices which screen, horizontally speaking, is below up to 600 pixels. So, what do we want to change? We want to change the container. Look at the syntax, container. And then, does anyone know in Flexbox how we change the arrangement?
Flex direction.
Flex direction, I love that, yes. Flex direction, what? Column, correct. And then look, boom. It's pretty cool, right? Look at the way it works.
And now if you want to center, what you have to do?
If you want to center, that's a separate topic. Yeah, it's not going to be that easy. That's part of the intermediate training, actually. So look, let me change, instead of 600, only 500, just because I don't have a space enough on my screen. And then look, that's mobile, right? Probably you cannot see anything, but here it's telling me the viewport, the size of the screen. So look, 475, starting at 500, everything will change. Look, 491, 93, 94, 95, bam, you see? That's a media query. That's the way you can deal with responsive design. Yeah? And of course, you can have multiple media queries. Specific UI for mobile, then another speed trap for tablets, then another one for big screens. Yeah, there are many different strategies. But I hope you agree that that line is sort of an if statement in JavaScript. If the resolution is below 500, then apply that style. Yeah, sort of. All right. Any questions? No. So flex is one of my favorite features in CSS. However, it's not perfect. Flex works really well when we are working in one direction. Either all the elements are in one row, all the elements are in one column, but
Ricardo,
yep.
you could do it all the way around. I mean, like minimum width.
Yeah, of course. We could do it on the other way around. We can do mobile first development, and that means, look, I'm assuming I'm coding for mobile. Because I'm coding for mobile, by default, I want to display the elements by columns. And then, yeah, instead of max, min. Min width, then what? You tell me. Flex 750. Doesn't matter the pixel. Flex direction what? Row, correct. That's proper mobile first development. Because the very first thing we did is to think on mobile. And then, once our appetite is satisfied, then, boom, we go desktop. This is Instagram way of coding. All right, so this is about flex. And as I say, that works really well as far as you have either one column or one row. But in some particular scenarios, you need something else. You need to deal with both rows and columns at the same time. Let me show you an example. So if I go to Codery and I go to the platform and I sign in and all these sort of things. So first of all, I know this workshop is taking longer than expected. I hope you don't mind. So if I go to training, you can do UI. So what we've done today is part of intermediate. Not because what we've done today is actually part of intermediate, but because this exercise goes beyond. They talk about more complex scenarios eventually. So let's do intermediate. And then, yeah, we got 2 topics about flex and 1 about grid. So let's do at least 1 question about flex. Look, what we got here. We got our smartphone and we expected to add 3 elements. Welcome to Flex. On the right hand side, we got some basic styling, border, whatever. So then we need to write the HTML. So can anyone tell me how the HTML should look like? Div? Class or class name?
Class name.
Wrong. This is only HTML and CSS. I know it could be confusing, but it's important to see the difference. Class equals what? Container, right? Then we close it before we forget. 3 divs inside, fantastic. So div, class equals item, fantastic. Yeah, let me copy it. You can see the same shortcut applies here as well because that's the VS Code editor, right? Well, oops, welcome to Flex. Something like that. Anything else, guys? No? All right. No, that's perfect. That's perfect. It's good to see such high level of optimism. Right, let's evaluate it. Wrong. Look. This is what we expected, and this is what we return. Expected, return. Expected, return. And then the diff. You know, if you like to watch crap TV shows on Netflix, you know the one that try to find drug dealers on the airports? And they, you know that they do like a test on the back, and they apply some sort of liquid, whatever, and if it becomes pink, that means you're a drug dealer, right? And then you go to jail. Who knows? Everyone has a dark past, right? All right, so our drug test revealed that we didn't do the expected thing, right? In other words, the elements are not displayed alongside. Why? Display flex. Yes. Where? Yes. Yes. Dot container. Then what? Display flex.
Inline flex.
What?
Inline flex.
Inline flex? No, no, no. Display flex. You can do display flex, display block, display inline, but display goes on the left.
And then in item we have to add the flex one.
Ah, nice. Let's evaluate it as it is. Oh, look, again, expected, return. Expected, return. What else, guys?
Yeah, so flex one and
Correct.
Justifying.
Flex 1. You remember flex 1 to make sure that our elements span all the available space. Right, let's evaluate again. Will we get confetti this time? Oh, not yet. Ah. Let's see the difference. Expected. Oh, it's getting close. Text align. Oh, of course. How do we align the text, guys?
That's align
text align center or
Text align center.
justify content also we can
or align items.
Or align, well, there are,
Answer is fine.
it's fine. Let's see if it's fine. Confetti or not confetti? Yes, confetti time, right? So that's the intermediate, the first question on intermediate. But, let me show you a problem using read, which I'm not going to solve, but I like to invite you to solve the same problem using flex.
This is a great system.
That's grid system, correct. And we need to build it as part of this question. You cannot do that using flex unless you write something completely unmaintainable, you know, Fukushima code. However, with grid, we can handle that easily with 20 quotes, right? That's why grid is so powerful. You can see here, we need to deal with both rows and columns. You see, row number 1, but then row number 2 at the same time has column, and then you see it's a complex layout. It's not easy. That's why grid tends to simplify. And how do we do that with grid? Let me show you. The very first thing we need to do is, let me get rid of the flex direction. So the very first thing we need to do is display what? Grid, correct. Instead of flex, grid. Boom. Immediately something happened. The next thing we need to do is to declare the virtual columns. Do you remember the virtual columns?
Yeah.
And thankfully with grid it's even easier to understand. Why? Look, grid, template, columns. And now look at the syntax. 1FR, 1FR, 1FR.
That means 3 columns.
Correct. Look, that means, let me get rid of let's leave the pineapple for now. That we are creating 3 columns, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. If we got more elements, they will move to the second row, right? What happened, guys? If now I change the second one, you see, instead of 1FR to 2FR.
Is it going to take 2 columns in that order?
Correct. Look. Boom. You see? Here we are declaring a layout with how many virtual columns?
5.
Wrong.
7.
Wrong.
4.
4. Correct. We have 4 virtual columns.
3 and 2.
Yeah? And the way we read that is the first element, the first item, will span 1 virtual column. The second item will span 2 virtual columns. And the third item will span 1 virtual column. What will happen with the fourth element? How many virtual columns will it span?
1.
1, again, because we'll go back here. And with the fifth one? 2, correct. Let's prove that. Let's add a fifth element. Give me another piece of fruit, guys.
Watermelon.
Watermelon. Right. Look at the watermelon. Spans the same as the orange. Yeah, because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does it make sense? All right. So that's the way you deal with grid. And
Every column will stick to that configuration that you did there.
yeah. One more thing about grid. One of the things I love about grid is how easy it is to, for instance, having some margin separating the elements. Let me ask you something. How would you separate the elements? Imagine that I want to have a gap, space between the elements. So can we use margin here? Let's have a look. Yes, but it added, what's the space here, guys?
Padding.
No, it's a margin, but how many pixels do we have here?
Oh,
Wrong, it's not 10. 20. Because we got 10 pixels because of the apple and 10 pixels because of the pineapple. 20. That's not what I wanted. I wanted to have 10. Then what do? 5, all right, well, yeah, let's put 5. Okay, yeah, it got better. However, wait a minute. I wanted to have a space surrounding my items, but I don't want that space here. What's that? I don't want that. How do we get rid of that space?
Why don't you just choose which section do you want to have? Emergent top, or emergent bottom, or emergent right?
Yeah, but making bottom. Eventually, that will be impossible to maintain. Yeah. However, and this is what I love grid. With grid, you can solve it in one sexy line. You can do, look, grid gap, 10 pixels. That's it. Boom, fixed. You see? Grid gap says, hey, what's the space between each fruit? Only between the fruits, not surrounding them. You see? Grid gap, fantastic. Any questions? No? Edward, do you have any questions, mate? I'll take that as no. All right, so, yeah, I'm not charging my laptop, which is a bit inconvenient. We're almost done. The only thing I want to show you is, so did you say anything, Edward?
No, I said no.
Oh, cool, awesome. So the very last thing is I would like to show the first exercise using grid. Same thing we did with Flex. Look at what we got here. We got 2 columns, right? And then look, we want to even compare the behavior across different devices, smartphones, tablets, whatever. Yeah. On the right hand side, we got nothing this time. Not HTML, no HTML, no CSS. So you tell me, guys, how do we solve it?
Let's start by
Div, okay? Div with 5 items, right? Class, item, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then the text. Grid can be very tricky.
Then you need to put on the get the wrap section around, you put class equals container.
Correct. I agree with Jack. We need to do class equals container, wrapper, whatever. Class, right? Okay, let's go back to the CSS. Container, what do we need to do here?
Start by displaying grid.
Display grid. Visually speaking, we can see there is some gap. What's the gap? Can anyone tell me, according to the description of the test, what's the gap between the items? 10 or 20? 10. The gap between them is set to 10 pixels, right? So how do we add that? Grid gap, 10 pixels, fantastic. What else? Background color. Yes, we need to change the background color of the boxes, right? How do we do that?
Background dash color.
Interesting. Here, what happened if I add the background color here in the container? everything will become highlighted, right? We don't want that. We want to add that on each individual item. Dot item, background color, lime. You got it. Anything else, guys?
And black text.
Black text. How do we change the text?
No, font
Color, font color,
Oh, no, font color doesn't exist. It's just color.
just color. That's correct. That's the way you change the color of the text. Color black, I think, right? Anything else, guys?
The
Internal
internal gutter.
gutter. 20 pixels. How do we create that internal gutter? Padding, that's correct. With margin, we can set the space between you and your neighbor. Yeah? Space outside. With padding, we can set the space inside of the box. So, padding, 20 pixels. Anything else? Let's try. All right, let's try. Let's try. Marty, I don't know. Let's try. Confetti or not confetti? Ooh, that's horrible. What happened? We expected that, fantastic, but what the hell we did? Oh. Yeah, columns, Catherina, how do we do that?
Grid column.
Grid columns, one and one.
Template.
One and four, one and four. And then you feel quite optimistic about that, but because you became already successful developers, you realize that sort of green, underline, this is a friendly way to say you are wrong, right? So it's not grid columns.
Grid template.
Grid, template. What is a dash? What is a dash? Between grid and template, right? Oh, it's not highlighted anymore. Looking better. Is it one? What happens if we put two? Let's see if it works. Look, what we expected, you see? Because the second column has two fractions, it doesn't work, of course. Eh? So we need to leave it one. What will happen if I do that? We'll create three columns. That means that won't work, of course, right? You see? So we need to leave it only with two columns. So I'm 93% sure it will work this time. That's it. Cool? Yeah, so again, grid and flex, very vital topics. So you remember on Monday, I told you that one of the reasons why a company may be interested in hiring you is because you are supposed to know very little, okay? But at least you are supposed to know the new things, right? That's a good example. That's a good example. If you are working with senior developers, especially JavaScript developers, legacy developers, if you accept the expression, I'm sure they've heard about grid and flex, but most likely they won't have any experience. So they will appreciate that sort of skills as part of their team, right? So don't underestimate how important these things are. Anything else?
In real life, then you have to use the two together.
It depends. As always, it depends. I'll show you an example. If you want to do, yeah. So the thing is, flex is, generally speaking, easier. So unless you have a good reason, I will personally use flex. In some situations, flex is not enough. At that time, then use grid. Yeah? And again, let me show you a bit of the code. I'm not going to solve it. Of question number 5, the grid layout. Look. As you can see, we've got some complexity here, right? We've got some, especially especially here. And the exercise is not even completed, so you need to add way more things to it. So grid can become tricky and complex. If you have one direction, either one row or one column, use flex. If you have to deal with multiple directions, then use.
For example, menu, definitely flex, right?
Yeah. At the menu, look, I got one column, right? I don't need grid at all. So then use flex. Yeah. Cool. Anything else, guys? No? Edward, any questions?
Picture grid.
What is it?
If I have
Nope.
a picture grid, 3 rows or 3 by row, I can use both. So which would I go? Flex?
You will see. Starting on task number probably 10 to 11 on conflicts, you will see the limitations of flex. Because you will see that your layout with your sexy pictures won't look perfect anymore depending on the screen resolution. So I want you, first of all, to struggle a bit with flex, and that will prove how good grid is to solve these problems. But you'll fix it once you find the problem. One of the main problems of modern software is over-engineering. You know, over-engineering means you have a small requirement, but in reality, you are asked to build A, B, and C. You, because you are a very good developer, you build A, B, and C, D, E, F, H, E, A, right? That's a problem, because you are adding more complexity to the software. Agile. Let's start simple, and once we face the problem, let's think how to solve it. Anything else, guys? No? Cool, that was it. Cheers.